Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I have made tons and tons of Red Komodo videos. If you haven't seen them, go ahead and give them a watch. But I've made tons of these now, and it's kind of making me ask the question, you know, it seems like the thing that I'm passionate about these days is this camera. Filmmaking obviously as well, but you know, I'm very excited about this camera, and it's making me ask the question, am I now a Red fanboy? Like, have I switched sides? Is my allegiance now with Red? And that, I mean, that's kind of a stupid question because I don't think you ever fully align with a company. I don't think you should fall into that camp. If a company comes out with a better camera that will serve you better, I don't think there should be a reason why you don't switch sides just out of obligation. But it's kind of fun to play the game and to, you know, kind of align with certain companies. And, you know, I think every filmmaker to an extent kind of has that a little bit though. Whether we like to admit it or not, we're, you know, kind of a Canon person or a Sony person or a, you know, Lumix person or whatever. And yes, we can switch from that, but I think at given times in our lives, in our careers, we tend to find ourselves gravitating towards certain companies. And I think for me right now, that company is Red. I'm really gravitating towards where they're going as a company and their latest product, the Komodo. And I think it's a really interesting direction. Like, what an interesting camera. It's been used on feature films now. It was used on Suicide Squad as one of their cameras that they used on that production. It's, you know, used by indie filmmakers. It's used by commercial filmmakers now, sometimes wedding filmmakers. It's a widely diverse camera. And I think that's so interesting, so cool that, you know, a camera that I'm using is also a camera that they're using on a feature film like Suicide Squad. That's pretty crazy if you think about it, that I have access to that gear. But anyway, before I got this camera, I had a lot of hesitations actually about it. I was not initially thinking about getting a Red. I didn't have it in my mind that I was going to purchase a Red. I was just looking for what's my next step. I had been shooting on the GH5 for a number of years, and though it's still a great camera in a lot of ways, I had felt like my cinematography and filmmaking skills had gotten to a certain level, and I was just hitting a wall with the gear that I was using, with the camera that I was using. I just felt like I was, you know, I was able to, you know, light shots and construct frames and images in a way that should look really, really good on camera, but I just felt like the camera that I had just was not getting where I needed it to go. And I think getting the Komodo kind of confirmed that in my mind, because I was seeing images that other people were creating with the exact same techniques that I was using, and I felt this disconnect of, why does my stuff not look that way? And it's not, you know, a huge incremental difference, right? Like, it's not like I was 50% off, but it's that little bit. And that it's when you get to a certain level in your filmmaking career, you notice those little differences. You notice that, you know, 1%, that 5%, that 3% difference in work. And that's what I was seeing. It's, you know, I had the quality of light right, I had the direction, I had the softness, like all this stuff, the balance between, you know, your subject and the background, the composition, all these things I felt like I was doing, but it wasn't looking like it did from people that I look up to. And so I bought this camera and I started, you know, using the same techniques that I had been using with my GH5, and I was like, okay, this is it. This is what's been missing. Like, just the way that the skin tones look, the way that, you know, the highlights roll off, the way that the shadows kind of compare with the rest of the image. Like, everything just seemed to work together way better. But again, like, it's that little difference. If I didn't know those essentials beforehand and I just had a GH5 and then a Komodo and shot side by side, and I wasn't already, you know, doing all these things to make the image look good, I don't think it would have made much of a difference. Like, that's not the thing that would have elevated my work and made it higher quality. At the end of the day, it really is, you know, your filmmaking knowledge and the tools and tricks that you do to make that image look good when it comes to lighting and composition and framing and all those other techniques. But that secret sauce on top can be the camera. And in this scenario, I found that it was. But anyway, the point is, But regardless of that, the point is that I was not seeking out the Komodo. I was not looking at Red. What I was actually looking at was Canon cinema. This is, you know, a year and a bit ago. I was looking at the C200. I really had my eyes on that. I was watching tons of tutorials on it, and, you know, footage reviews and stuff like that. And that was the camera that I thought I was going to get. And then all of a sudden the C70 came out, and I got really excited about that camera, and I started researching that a lot, and I thought that that was going to be the perfect camera for me, until I kept looking a little bit deeper and I came across the Red Komodo. And at first I was like, I don't know, Reds are a lot of work to have. Anyone that I had known that had owned a Red before just had said that, you know, there's a lot of maintenance that had to go on with it. Anytime you need to get accessories, it was like basically like buying a DSLR just to get a monitor or to get, you know, a handle for it, or like a Red Meg for it to store your footage. It was just so expensive to get into it and maintain that gear, and so I never really considered it. But then the more I started to learn about the Red Komodo, the more and more I got interested in it, learning things like that they had third-party accessories that you could buy, the price point of it, the, you know, accessibility of it, that their menu systems were quite simplified, that it was a very easy to use camera. That's what I wanted. I didn't want something where it just bogged down the creative process for me, where the tool that I was using just ended up being something that just frustrated me and I never ended up using it anyway. But the Komodo seemed to not be that. It seemed to be something that actually made that process much, much easier. And so I ended up kind of changing my perspective a little bit. I had thought that Canon was the direction I was going to go, but then I started considering Red and the Komodo. And I'm so happy that I did that, because I ended up obviously getting the Komodo, as I've talked about, and it's been an incredible camera. Like, I just started to realize more and more that this is the perfect camera for me. And I have a friend that has the C70, and I've got to use that as well. And I'm so happy that I went with the Komodo in comparison to the C70, though the C70 is an incredible camera as well, and I love using it as well. But the Komodo just feels, when you use it, it just feels like it kind of opens up the doors of creativity, at least to me. Like, when you have it in your hands, just the way that the menus work, the way that, like, just the ease of use of it, the UI on it, it just feels like it's something that's so intuitive. And then just the fact of, I feel like when you shoot on the Komodo and you see the image on the monitor, it's kind of that feeling of, yeah, that's what it's supposed to look like. And I did not have that with any cameras that I had used before. I always felt like it was, you know, I would shoot footage, or, you know, I would see footage on the monitor, and it was always this thing of like, oh, it could look better. It could look better. And you know, you try to dial it in the best you can with your lighting and modify things, and it was always like missing that extra 5%, which maybe doesn't seem that big, but to me it was. I love just nailing things. I love having things be perfect. And obviously, you know, nothing is perfect, but, you know, I like things being good. I love excellence. I love achieving something that is great, not just good. And so when I got the Komodo and was able to shoot and just see the image on the screen, it just kind of has that element of like, yeah, that's how it's supposed to look. That's how I saw it in my mind when I was thinking up what the shot could look like, or the scene could look like. Then you see it on the monitor and you just have this moment of like, yep, that's it. And there's something so fulfilling about that. There's something that just makes you want to shoot more when you have that experience over and over and over again. And every time that I load it onto my monitor, or I, you know, bring it into Premiere and I, you know, convert it to Rec 709, I look at it and I'm like, yeah, that's the way that this shot's supposed to look. And then you can obviously take it even further in color grading and push it. And there's so much flexibility with, you know, Red RAW files, or even with ProRes, it's pretty good too. But yeah, it's just so fulfilling. Like, the footage you get out of it is unreal, and it just takes the obstacles of filmmaking away, I've found. I feel like just achieving the shots that you want with the Komodo is just so much easier. It feels good to capture with this camera, and then in post-production it feels like you load the image, and now you can basically right away start creating a look for it. The exciting stuff, the creative part of the job, you can almost go to immediately, instead of, you know, when I was shooting GH5 or other cameras, it feels like you bring it in and you're trying to correct your skin tones, and it's a little too green and then it's a little too magenta, and you're trying to find the balance in there, and then it starts falling apart a little bit, and it just feels like you're never quite where you want it to be, which is just so dissatisfying. It's really discouraging when you're putting all this work into getting these shots and it just isn't quite getting there. Whereas with the Komodo, it feels like you load it up and it's pretty much there, and then you're just adding those creative elements and those creative flares to make it your own. And so anyway, I've loved this camera. I think I've been won over, at least in this season, to Red and the Komodo. And I mean, I'm excited to see what other camera companies come up with next. And this is a really cool time to live in, because good quality cameras and cinema gear has never been more accessible, and we're progressing so quickly with it, and quality of cameras and images is just getting better and better and better on a pretty regular and quick basis, which is very, very cool. I feel very privileged to be a filmmaker in this time, and it's exciting. Gear is fun. It should be fun. It shouldn't be a thing of you know, comparison, or, you know, feeling bad about what you do. Like, whatever camera you have, whatever camera you are, you know, privileged to have, use it, love it, make amazing content with it. And for me, that's ended up being the Komodo, and I've just fallen in love with this camera. But for you, it might be the A7S, it might be, you know, the R5 or R6, and that's great, that's okay. You know, find whatever works for you, and hopefully that camera, that piece of gear can just be a tool that really just helps you make the work that you want to make. Yeah. So anyway, that's all that I have for you today. Hopefully that is kind of a fun perspective for you. Hopefully you learned something, and maybe it inspired you as well to go out and make something for yourself, and get passionate about the gear that you have, or, you know, look into new gear in the future and have that be something that, you know, excites you and something that pushes you even further in your creative kind of journey, so to speak. So anyway, again, hopefully you enjoyed this video. Give it a like if you did, subscribe to this channel, and I will see you in the next one.